Right now, on the Sphinx, the most famous statue on Earth, there are 3 doors, and every one of them is locked. One sits on top of the Sphinx's head. One is cut into its back, sealed shut under an iron trap door, and one is buried between its front paws, behind a slab of granite that has stood there for over 3,000 years. We know who installed the locks. In 1926, a single French engineer sealed all 3 of them in the same year. What we still cannot answer is what he was closing off, because 90 years before that, a British colonel drilled 27 feet straight down into the Sphinx's back, searching for a hidden chamber. And when that shaft was finally reopened, there was a fragment of the Sphinx's own headdress lying at the bottom of it. This is the story of the 3 doors on the Sphinx that Egypt has never let anyone walk through. Let's start on top of the head. If you climb up onto the crown of the Sphinx, which almost no one is allowed to do, you find a rectangular shaft cut down into the stone. It is about 5 feet wide and nearly 6 feet deep. A black hole punched into the top of that weathered limestone skull. Travelers have been writing about it for centuries. A German visitor described a man climbing down inside the head back in the 1560s. A drawing from Napoleon's expedition in the 1790s shows figures standing on top of the head, one of them being hauled up out of a hole. The Roman writer Pliny the Elder, almost 2,000 years ago, passed on the belief that a king lay buried inside the statue. For a long time, nobody knew what the shaft was for. Today, the best guess is that it once anchored a headdress or a crown, the tall royal nemes the Sphinx would have worn when its face was still sharp and painted. But here is the part that matters. In 1926, a French engineer named Émile Baraise was hired to clear and restore the Sphinx. And when he reached that shaft in the head, he did not study it, or map it, or leave it open. He paved it over with cement and bolted a trap door across the top of the Sphinx's head. That trap door is still there. Now walk around to the back. The Sphinx has a lion's body, and near the middle of that body, cutting across the waist, there is a deep natural fissure in the rock, wide enough that a grown person can be lowered down into it, all the way to the floor. And in 1837, that fissure attracted the attention of a British Army colonel named Howard Vyse. Vyse was convinced the Sphinx was hollow, that it was hiding chambers, and he was not a patient man. Over at the pyramids, he used gunpowder to blast his way inside. At the Sphinx, he brought in a drill and bored a shaft down into the rock behind the head, 27 feet deep, hunting for a room. He never found one. The drill rod jammed, he tried to blast it loose, and eventually he gave up before he wrecked the statue. That borehole sat mostly forgotten for over a century, until it was finally cleared out in the 1970s. And what came out of the bottom was not treasure, and not a mummy. It was a broken piece of the Sphinx's own stone headdress, which had tumbled down inside long ago. When crews cleaned out the larger fissure, they found the junk that falls into an open pit over the years: pottery, charcoal, bits of an old water jug, and, bizarrely, a pair of modern leather shoes. Which tells you something simple and strange. That passage had been open and filled back in more than once. Baraise is the one who sealed it for good. He squared off the sides, roofed it over with iron bars and limestone, and set an iron trap door across the top. And then there is the 3rd door, the one everyone actually cares about. Between the front paws of the Sphinx stands a slab of pink granite almost 12 feet tall, weighing around 15 tons. It is called the Dream Stele, carved on the orders of a pharaoh named Thutmose IV around 1400 BC. But the stele is only the back wall of something larger. Dig down between the paws, and you find the remains of a small chapel, a sanctuary built right up against the chest of the Sphinx. When explorers first cleared it in the 1800s, they found a little open room, altars, smaller stones naming later pharaohs, and around it, more sealed openings dropping into the bedrock. One more time, it was Berets who covered the pit between the Paws, capped it with a cement roof and an iron grate, and locked it. 3 doors, 3 openings into the most studied statue on the planet, and all 3 of them closed up by the same man, in the same year, 1926. Which raises a simple question Egyptology has never really answered out loud. If there is nothing inside the Sphinx, why did we go to so much trouble to seal it shut? To understand why those doors stay locked, you have to understand one man. His name is Zahi Hawass, and for the better part of 40 years, almost nothing happened at the Giza Plateau without his say-so. He ran the Sphinx. He ran the pyramids. At his peak, he was the Secretary General of Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities, the single most powerful archaeologist on Earth, the man in the cowboy hat who decided what the world was allowed to dig up and what stayed buried. And in 1996, a film crew caught something on tape that people are still arguing about today. An American filmmaker named Boris Said was making a documentary about the legends of the Sphinx, and Hawass was his guide. One day, Hawass led the crew to the rump of the Sphinx, uncovered a small passage, and lowered himself down into a tunnel underneath the body. And with the camera rolling in the dark, he turned to them and said, "Word for word, this tunnel has been never opened before. No one really knows what's inside this tunnel, but we are going to open it for the first time." That was almost 30 years ago. The tunnel was never opened. There was talk of a contract, of a live television special where a hidden chamber under the Sphinx would be opened on camera for the first time in history. Says he went home to New York, waited, and never heard about that tunnel again. Now, on its own, that could be a coincidence. Plans fall apart, funding dries up. But watch what happens every time someone else gets close. In March of 2025, a team of Italian researchers went public with an astonishing claim. Using a form of satellite radar, they said they had detected enormous structures buried deep under the second pyramid at Giza, right next to the Sphinx. Shafts, chambers, tunnels, hundreds of feet down. We will come back to exactly what they claimed, because it is wild. But look at the response. Hawass did not say let's investigate. He went straight to the press and called the whole thing fake news, completely false, with no scientific basis. He pointed out correctly that Egypt had never given that team permission to work at the site, and the story was shut down within days. Then there is the promise he made most recently. In November of 2025, standing on a stage at a book fair, Hawass told a crowd that he had found something new inside the Great Pyramid. A sealed passage, about 30 meters long, detected with scanning equipment, ending at a stone door that had never been opened. And he said it would be revealed to the world in 2026, and that what lay behind it would rewrite the history of the pharaohs. That was the promise. As of the making of this video, we are well into 2026. There has been no opening, no press conference, no door. Just like the tunnel under the Sphinx in 1996, the sealed door is still sealed, and we are still waiting. So here is the pattern, laid out plainly. The one man who controls Giza has been filmed inside the Sphinx, promising to open a tunnel, and did not. He has promised to open a sealed door in the Great Pyramid, and has not. And when outsiders claim to find something underneath it all, he shuts them down. We are not going to tell you that is a conspiracy, but we are going to ask the obvious question. What would it take, just once, to actually open one of these doors and look? Because to understand why people are so desperate to get under the Sphinx, you have to go back to a man from Kentucky who never set foot in Egypt, and who, while he was asleep, told America exactly what was waiting beneath those paws. His name was Edgar Cayce, and in the first half of the 20th century, he was famous as America's sleeping prophet. He would lie down, slip into a trance, and answer questions about medicine, history, and the distant past. And in a series of readings in the 1930s and 40s, Cayce described something extraordinary. He said a civilization far older than dynastic Egypt, a lost world he called Atlantis, had survived a catastrophe and fled to the Nile. And before the pharaohs we know ever rose, they hid a record of everything they knew, a hall of records, in a sealed chamber beneath the Sphinx, near its paws. He even named the decade it would be found, the late 1990s. Now you can call that fantasy, and most historians do. There is no hall of records. No chamber of Atlantean scrolls has ever been pulled out of the sand. But here is the twist. Most people telling this story leave out. Cayce's prophecy did not just sit in a drawer. It sent people to Egypt. In 1971, a bored college student in North Dakota read about Cayce, got obsessed, and talked his way onto a Cayce-sponsored tour of Egypt to go looking for the Hall of Records. That student's name was Mark Lehner. And instead of finding Atlantis, Lehner fell in love with the real thing. He stayed. He learned Arabic. He went to Yale. And the Cayce organization, the foundation built around the sleeping prophet, funded his first real project in 1979, the first proper scientific survey ever made of the Great Sphinx, mapped stone by stone. Lehner went on to become one of the most respected Egyptologists alive, a man who now gently says he takes the Hall of Records metaphorically. The myth did not find Atlantis. The myth built the science. A prophecy about a chamber that probably does not exist is the reason we have the first real map of the Sphinx at all. Before we go any deeper, one quick thing. If you are watching this on your television right now, you can still be part of it. Take your remote, press the like button on your screen, and hit subscribe so the next scan, the next sealed door, the next thing they would rather keep closed comes straight to you. It genuinely helps us keep digging where the documentaries will not. All right, because that 1979 survey was only the beginning of the scanning. And what the machines have turned up since is exactly what reopened this whole fight. For decades now, scientists have been pointing instruments at Giza, trying to see inside the stone without breaking it. And in 2025, one team took it further than anyone. An Italian researcher named Filippo Biondi, working with a professor named Corrado Malanga, announced that by running satellite radar data through their own software, they had mapped a hidden world beneath the second pyramid, the Pyramid of Khafra, right beside the Sphinx. They described 8 massive vertical shafts, like cylindrical wells, plunging more than 600 meters straight down. 5 chamber-like structures near the base. A network of tunnels running as much as 2 kilometers, they suggested, linking all 3 pyramids together. Their spokesperson tied the deepest chambers to something out of Egyptian myth, an underworld they called the Halls of Amenti. Biondi put it bluntly to a British newspaper. He said the pyramids are merely the tip of the iceberg of a colossal underground complex. If it were true, it would be the biggest discovery in the history of archaeology. It is almost certainly not true. And you do not have to take Hawass's word for it, though he did call it fake news. The problem is physics. The kind of radar they used works near the surface. Its signal scatters and dies within the first few meters of solid rock. Ground-penetrating radar experts came forward to say plainly that no radar on Earth can resolve detail 600 meters down through limestone. As Hawass put it, the technique can show maybe 15 meters under the ground, not 600, and it never will. The claim was never published in a peer-reviewed journal. Egypt never granted the team permission to scan the site at all. And fact-checkers who went looking found that the whole Khafra project barely existed beyond a YouTube channel. Even other researchers who genuinely believe the Sphinx is older than the textbooks admit called this one a bridge too far. But here is what makes it so seductive and so frustrating. Because sometimes the scans are real. In 2017, a completely separate team of physicists used cosmic ray particles called muons, which really can pass through hundreds of feet of stone, and they found something genuine inside the Great Pyramid. A hidden void, at least 30 meters long, sitting above the Grand Gallery. It was published in the journal Nature. It is real. So the ground under Giza is not empty. There are real hollow spaces inside that stone, which is exactly why a claim like Beyondi's spreads across the internet in a day, and exactly why we cannot just laugh it off. The hard part, the part nobody wants, is telling the real hollow spaces from the fantasy. So let's end where the evidence actually is, not 600 meters down, not Atlantis. And to get there, it helps to know that people have climbed in under Giza before, and they always seem to hit the same thing. Said, the same filmmaker from that 1996 tunnel footage later described paying a local guide $20 to take him down an old, half-forgotten well a few hundred yards from the Sphinx, under the ancient causeway. He climbed down a rusty ladder some 70 feet, he said, into rooms holding enormous stone sarcophagi with their inner coffins gone, and then, down further still, into a flooded cavern with a pool of clear water and a pile of rocks stacked against the wall on the side, facing the Sphinx. We cannot verify most of what said claimed happened down there, and it should be treated as one man's account. But the well is real, the sarcophagi are real, and the pattern is the same one we keep running into. You get close, and what you find is a pile of rocks, a locked grate, a flooded passage, a dead end. Which brings us to the one space that should be the easiest of all to reach, just a few feet under the paws of the Sphinx. Back in 1991, an American geophysicist named Thomas Dobecki ran a seismic survey around the statue, sending sound waves into the ground and reading what bounced back. He was working with a Boston University geologist named Robert Schoch, who had his own controversial idea that the deep, rounded erosion on the Sphinx was carved by rainfall, which would make the statue thousands of years older than the textbooks allow. That part is still fiercely argued, but it was Dobecki's readings that turned up something no one was even looking for. Beneath the Sphinx, close to the Paws, the instruments found a cavity, a space in the bedrock, roughly rectangular, only a few meters down. And the regular boxy shape of it was strange enough that the report noted it looked, in their own words, like it could be man-made. Years earlier, a separate survey under the Great Stone Box behind the Paws had picked up what the team described as dead spots, open spaces, underground. Now, most geologists have a calm explanation. The limestone under Giza is riddled with natural hollows, dissolved out by water over millions of years. A void near the Sphinx is not proof of a secret room. It is probably just the rock doing what limestone does. Probably, because here is the plain truth that survives everything else in this story. That cavity, detected more than 30 years ago, sitting a few feet under the paws of the most famous statue on Earth, in the exact region where a sleeping prophet once swore a hidden chamber would be found, has never been dug up. Not because it lies beyond our reach, not because it is impossible to dig. It is right there, almost close enough to touch. It has simply never been opened. And that is the real riddle of the Sphinx. It was never the fantasy. It was never the underground city or the Atlantean library. It is the ordinary, maddening fact that there are real, sealed, physical spaces in and under this statue. A hatch in the head, a shaft in the back, a pit between the paws, a void in the bedrock. And for 100 years, the answer to what is inside them has stayed exactly the same. A locked door and a man with the only key, telling us there is nothing to see. 3 doors, sealed by one engineer in a single year. A tunnel, promised on camera and never opened. A door in the Great Pyramid, promised this year and still shut. A prophecy that accidentally built a science, and a cavity under the Paws that no one will dig. None of it is proof of anything hidden. But all of it adds up to a plateau where the loudest question is no longer what is down there. It is why, after all this time, we are still not allowed to look. And if you want to see what happens the one time they did open a sealed wall in Egypt, and what was actually waiting behind it, that is the room behind Tutankhamun's wall, and it is the next thing you should watch.